Smartphones. They've become a focal point of our lives and connected homes. They're acting as our games consoles, movie and music players, mobile offices, Wi-Fi hotspots, daily planners, and of course as our mobile phones. But what is a smartphone? At base level, all phones come loaded with a CPU or central processing unit. They also pack radios, a screen, as well as battery, ports and buttons. Progressing from feature phones towards smartphones, and you can also expect to find things like cameras, sensors, and a pretty hefty amount of storage as well as RAM. Starting at the top, the CPU can be likened to the human brain of your phone. It powers things along, and its capacity limits how hard you can push your phone's capabilities. Naturally, the more powerful your phone is, the better it'll be for 3D gaming and HD movies, whereas even lower-end phones can play back simple games like Angry Birds. CPU power is measured in megahertz and gigahertz, with 1000 megahertz equaling 1 gigahertz. CPUs are available in single, dual and quad-core varieties. The more cores and gigahertz, the more powerful your CPU. More cores won't always be right for you though. Many phones offer less powerful CPUs in order to save power. Also, quad-core phones are quite a bit more expensive. Today, the quad-core CPUs on offer include Samsung's Exynos processor found on the Galaxy S3, Huawei's K3V2 on the Ascend D Quad, and Nvidia's Tegra 3 chip found on the HTC One X European version. Qualcomm make the dual-core CPU of choice. This is a Snapdragon S4 and it offers great performance and battery life despite less cores. It's found on the North American version of the HTC One X. RAM is short for Random Access Memory. This is different to the memory for storing pictures and MP3s, which we'll talk about a little later. RAM is used to temporarily store app and program information and carries out the physical running of processes like music, running the web browser, or loading a game. RAM's measured in megabytes, so the more RAM the phone has, the faster it'll generally feel. A phone's radio sends and receives data, be it voice, 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth. A cellular radio can be integrated into the CPU chipset, as is the case with the Qualcomm Snapdragon S4, or it can be integrated separately, as with Nvidia's Tegra 3 processor. We interact more with our screens than any other part of our smartphone today. When describing a screen, we usually refer to its size, its resolution, and its type. Screen size is determined by measuring the distance from the bottom left corner to the top right corner, or vice versa, and it's usually measured in inches. iPhones have historically been 3.5 inches, though the iPhone 5 will probably change this. The trend for bigger screens has meant Android phones have grown as large as 5.3 inches on the Samsung Galaxy Note. Screen sharpness is dictated by resolution. Now this refers to the number of dots or pixels that emit light and make up your display. The more dots you have, the more seamless the image, with Apple coining the term Retina display to signify a screen with no discernible pixels. Finally, screen technology. This comes in the form of either LCDs or AMOLEDs. LCDs tend to produce purer whites, sharper pictures and better viewing angles at the higher end. However, AMOLEDs offer more vibrant colours and deeper blacks. Next, a smartphone's battery. Coupled with its processor and software, this dictates how long your handset will last. Now, battery power is measured in milliamps, however milliamps aren't everything. Phones lose energy in the form of heat emitted from the phone, radios trying to access connections, and most importantly, screen brightness. In fact, the processor has just as much bearing on battery as a milliamp capacity. Cameras are becoming a staple of modern-day smartphones. More and more phones are including front-facing cameras for video and chatting, and most have a camera around the back as well. The latter camera is always the better performing of the two, and in some phones, such as the Nokia 808 PureView, it rivals high-end compact cameras in terms of image quality and shooting options. Camera resolution is measured in megapixels, with most being 3 megapixels or higher. More important than pixels, however, is autofocus, lens, and sensor quality. If your camera has autofocus, you can take a variety of shots, be they landscape or close up. Lens quality discerns the clarity of the shot, while the phone's camera sensor dictates graininess and overall quality. We're almost at the finish line, but before we move on to our last point, storage, we're going to quickly talk about sensors. These, as their name suggests, sense. They sense light levels, they detect movement and proximity. But why? A light sensor will adjust brightness to save your battery. A motion sensor will silence ringing phones when they get turned upside down. And a proximity sensor will turn off the screen when you put it to your face, so on-screen buttons aren't pressed mid-call. The last thing we're going to talk about is storage. So we've already spoken about pixels, gigahertz and milliamps. Now it's time to introduce megabytes and gigabytes. Most phones come with some internal storage, measured in gigabytes. 1 gigabyte is 1000 megabytes. Some phones also offer an option to expand the amount of storage you have by inserting a memory card, usually microSD. Now this will allow for an additional 32 gigabytes of memory. To give you an idea of storage and its real-world benefits, 1 gigabyte will store roughly 2 standard definition movies, 200 songs, or 2000 good quality pictures. So there you have it, an introductory crash course as to what's inside your smartphone. Hopefully you better understand what to look out for when bagging your next mobile. If you want to know more about any specific element, check out our YouTube channel and Rekombu's website for news, reviews and guides galore.